my name is Rich, and this is Rich Talks Records, episode number 56. And today, this is something of a companion piece to my Greatest Guitar Teams video. This is 21, I think, of my favorite rhythm sections. Unlike the Guitar Teams video, which was ranked, however, arbitrarily, this isn't really ranked. I think it sort of gets ranked towards the end, and I'll probably specifically mention that. But generally speaking, this is just what I like and what I gravitate to most as a listener, as opposed to more of an objective list, though I feel pretty strongly about the ones that I will be ranking, I guess. But that's going to be a little later on. First of all, some ground rules. There's not going to be... This is going to basically just be about rock and roll bands, mostly leaving out funk, soul, R&B, and jazz, because that would just kind of be its own list then. And also, I think the nature of what the rhythm section does in those idioms is a little different than that of rock and roll, and I don't know that I necessarily want to sort of try to cross those wires if I'm attempting to be at least somewhat objective about this. So another ground rule is there may be some bands that are missing here that you may have heard me praise in previous videos. The reason why is because the main thing, so in the same way that in the guitar teams it really had to be a guitar team that really interlocked and really sort of created their own musical language, this is going to be where the bass player and the drummer really are one, and where there isn't any sort of outsized disparity from one to the other. The other thing is, the best way for me to have made this list was for me to think in terms of like my instincts, what came to me first. So for instance, I'll get a potentially controversial omission out of the way first. The Rolling Stones are not on this list. Why? I love Bill Wyman. I understand his significance and importance. I think he's great. I've always thought he was great. However, my appreciation, and no disrespect to him at all, but my appreciation of Charlie Watts is totally outsized as a listener to my appreciation of Bill Wyman. So that's kind of like the perfect example. This list is really where the bass player and the drummer are really neck and neck for me, and where they really do play as a rhythm section. And also, whereas I had honorable mentions and things like that in the last time I did this, there aren't any honorable mentions. I just came up with 21. It was a longer list, and I just sort of whittled it down a little bit. Again, this is not necessarily meant to be like the ultimate all-time objective greatest list. It's just a little bit more of what I gravitate to and respond to as a listener. Oh, and at the end of all of this, we're going to have some fun viewer questions, so you'll want to stick around to the end. So let's get started. So first up at number 21 is kind of a left field choice, and that's the Buffalo Springfield. Dewey Martin on drums and Bruce Palmer on bass. Left field choice because, they basically don't really play that much from my understanding on the third record, and the first album is pretty restrained in terms of its production. So they don't really get to show off too much of what they got. And as Neil Young himself lamented in Jimmy McDonough's incredible book, Shaky, there aren't really decent live recordings of the original Buffalo Springfield lineup. So why are they here? Because sometimes the potential of something is as exciting as the realization of that talent. And the Buffalo Springfield in general are kind of a funny band like that, because I feel like in some sort of alternate reality, maybe not in terms of popularity, but they do become the American Beatles. They actually do live up. Neil Young and Stephen Stills actually do sort of become this like Lennon-McCartney two-headed hydra, and they just go from strength to strength, creating kind of ever more ambitious albums and pushing each other in kind of a great friendly competition. But there are glimpses of the Palmer-Martin rhythm section that are just so exciting to me, and specifically Mr. Soul, you know. And I feel like that's the thing with the Buffalo Springfield, is you constantly get these, like, these glimpses, you get these moments where it really comes into sharp focus, and where the scope of their greatness at least momentarily gets realized. But again, as Neil Young said, there was never anybody there to go, great, next song, or great, next take. And so you just get these glimpses, but those glimpses are so exciting. And with Dewey Martin's kind of soul chops as a drummer, but then Bruce Palmer's absolutely exquisite melodic bass lines, gorgeous stuff. And even on the Trans concert that Bruce Palmer is on, there are moments that are just really, really gorgeous. And he, you know, while from what I understand he was a little bit in a wayward state at that point, he still had it. He still had the goods and could still deliver. And it's still some amazing bass playing. So I feel in some other world, the Buffalo Springfield is fully realized, and the rhythm section is like properly recognized as one of the all-time greats. So they're making my list. Next up at number 20, we have Jerry Allison on drums and Joe Malden on bass, and that is from the Crickets, Buddy Holly and the Crickets. And you know, you go back and you look at just how early on that is, how under-mic'd everything is, and you look at that Ed Sullivan performance of Peggy Sue and the sheer jet propulsion of what these guys were generating, and what that was been, 57, I think. Absolutely incredible. And I think that they were very forward-thinking for their time. I think Jerry Allison is an absolutely tremendous all-time great drummer, and there are this recording sessions of just him and Buddy Holly. I think I've referenced those before, where that's basically like just the two of them are the greatest rock and roll band on the planet at that moment. So I'm very fond of that. Now, I mean, I'm a big Buddy Holly fan. This is the big behemoth German set that has basically everything. I have 2 sets of everything, if that makes sense. And someday, I don't know when, because it is daunting, but someday I am going to do the big series, the big immersive deep dive series of Buddy Holly videos. I have no idea when that day will come, but someday. But for now, number 20. Next up, we've seen this one before, haven't we? Yes, Dave Allen on bass and the great Hugo Burnham on drums, the Gang of Four. If you've heard these records, especially, I mean, that original incarnation, if you've heard these records, you know. If you haven't, go check them out, the first album, Entertainment. But people focus a lot on Entertainment, and rightfully so. It is incredible. But the Solid Gold album, the Another Day, Another Dollar EP, all of their B-sides, they were an incandescent band. And their ability to harness and repurpose funk rhythms, dance music in general, and push it out into these great stratospheric new ways. Absolutely tremendous. Like, just as great as the rest of the band is, and as great as Andy Gill's guitar playing is, these guys, that is one hell of a formidable engine room. Absolutely incredible. Next, we have the Rollins Band, and I'm going with the original. No disrespect to Melvin, but I'm going with the original rhythm section, Sim Kane on drums, and the great Andrew Weiss. In my other videos, I've talked about how Andrew Weiss is one of my favorite musicians of all time, full stop. That was an unbelievable rhythm section, and the early recordings that they did with Greg Ginn when they were in Gone are amazing. And as great as Greg Ginn is, they are right there giving him a run for his money and pushing him. That should have just been the next rhythm section for Black Flag. Black Flag would have gone up a whole nother level if Greg had wanted to keep the band together. That would have just been brain melting. But as it stands, you get that early version of the Rollins Band up through and including 1992's The End of Silence. Absolutely phenomenal. 2 performances in particular. Hard, which is on here on hard volume, but then also Do It. Those are 2 of the best rock and roll rhythm section performances of all time. They are rip-roaring, white-hot, absolutely incredible. Love it. And again, Andrew Weiss, there's kind of nothing else like him. Love them. There you go, Rollins Band. Up next at number 17, a band that I declared in my Guitar Teams video as an internet-only band, so I have nothing to show. And that is, of course, AC/DC, Phil Rudd and Cliff Williams. The ultimate in rock and roll minimalism, the ultimate in interlocking musical discipline, the ultimate in groove and feel and swing. I talked about in the Guitar Teams video how it would be comical to have a Guitar Teams video without the Young Brothers. Well, it would be comical to have a list of rhythm sections without them, without AC/DC. As I called them, the Rhythm Machine, and I said that it was sort of ridiculous to strip the guitars out of the Rhythm Machine to focus just on that. But guess what? A big part of the Rhythm Machine is, right? And the taste level, just the innate intelligence that it takes to underplay and yet do it exactly 100% right every single time. And I think that Phil Rudd definitely benefited from such an amazing drum sound from Mutt Lange. But you go and you look at the live recordings of them, and that's where the real proof of their greatness is. And I mean, I remember way back on Headbangers Ball, that live version of Back in Black that they would play. I mean, that forged my love of them. That the thing, to paraphrase Keith Richards again, you know, there's the rock, but there's also the roll. And AC/DC are masters of the roll. They don't forget about that. And an absolutely incredible rhythm section, one of the very best. So all respect to Phil Rudd and Cliff Williams. Number 16, Motorhead. These aren't really in order, so I'm not sure why I'm saying number 16. But next up, we'll say, is Motorhead. And that, of course, is Lemmy on bass and Filthy Animal Taylor. No disrespect to Mickey D, who's great and was in the band for a really long time, and those later period Motorhead records are really, really cool. But the main stuff, as far as I'm concerned, is still with Filthy Animal Taylor. The double bass drum style, incredible. And I think I love what Fast Eddie Clarke does, but I think musically, a lot of what I really love about them is it's kind of like the Rollins Band, like where the bass is something of a lead instrument, and as awesome and important as the guitar is, and it really is, a lot of what you're hearing musically is being generated by those two guys, and they do it again and again and again and again. And that's not to say that a lot of people like harp on the sameness of Motorhead, but really they approach rock and roll from like every angle and with such amazing ferocity. So I love, like, you know, the chase is better than the catch is not them going at thrasher pace. You know, they could take it into a lot of different tempos, and they could take it into a lot of different sort of idioms and subgenres of rock and roll, and they were masters of that. So, like, I don't really know how they did it because, again, there's certain music you hear, and I've talked about this before, and Motorhead is one, like Howlin' Wolf is another. There's such kind of an intensity and purity of purpose that it's tapped into some sort of core essence that makes a lot of musical analysis or critique sort of pointless. So, because what you're getting is just so totally undiluted. So yeah, absolutely, like, incredible. Filthy Animal Taylor, Lemmy, the sheer joy of listening to these guys play. Motorhead. Next up, a very early favorite of mine that has just continued to be a perennial favorite year after year. And one of those bands that, you know, everything I liked about it when I was 12, I feel like I was only hearing maybe like 30 to 40% of it, and there's so much more to it now as I have aged. And that, of course, is Brad Whitford and Joey Kramer from Aerosmith. Again, a big part of what you're hearing musically is the rhythm section. There are a million bands who have tried to do what Aerosmith did, right? And pretty much all of them fell on their faces, and especially some of what became known as hair metal. Some of those bands would try and groove like Aerosmith, and they don't come close. Not at all. Aerosmith is another band that understood the role and could go into basically like a funk direction, but could also rock incredibly. This is, of course, their 1976 album, their crowning achievement. Rocks, named by Joe Perry. I love this story. Named by Joe Perry because it is and it does. And I love that. So yeah, I mean, you really listen to what Brad Whitford's doing, and I always have loved it. Those are really amazing bass lines in there. And then Joey Kramer, super underrated, super underrated. An amazing band, and they rhythmically keep you on the edge of your seat. So absolutely, Aerosmith. Okay, I'm deviating from the funk thing for one time in this video, simply because these guys really did function more sort of as a rock band than they did a funk band, where there were like horn sections and band members coming and going, and where it was more like a review. These guys did function more rock band-like, and this, of course, is Chic. Bernard Edwards on bass, Tony Thompson on drums. Good Lord, what an unbelievable, formidable unit. And they are incredible on other people's records, specifically the Diana Ross Diana album from 1980. But the Chic albums from start to finish, and the complexity that they developed, the interlocking complexity that they developed as they went along, absolutely incredible. The album-to-album development is amazing. They have artistic development, but they also had songs that like my parents liked. Phenomenal, and just such amazing players. And Bernard Edwards' sonic identity as a bass player and the elegance of his bass playing is just kind of almost unmatched. I love his playing, and it's just such a joy to listen to. My favorite song of theirs is maybe Strike Up the Band. Like, it's not on this album, but like, I can just sort of listen to that that song infinitely, and have, just, again, talk about the joy of listening. You can really, really, really revel in and get lost in the expansive grooves of Chic. Next up, Nirvana. You may have heard of them. I don't know. They're kind of an obscurity from the Pacific Northwest. This is In Utero. This is their third album. I don't know if you've heard of this one. I bought this in December of 1993. It was a little Christmas gift to myself that I found at a record store in Oak Park. And I was thrilled that they actually had the vinyl record, because I had bought the CD on the day it came out, but it was very exciting to really have this. I felt like I was really hearing it. How old would I have been? I would have been, 16, I think, at the time. Anyway, I like the Aaron Buckhart stuff. I love Chad Channing's playing with Nirvana, but I once this is in 95, I think. I took all of the Nirvana recordings that I had, and including bootlegs, and tried as best as I could with the dodgy liner notes that were available in pre-internet back then, to put everything in what I assumed was chronological order. And I forget what it was. It was like tape 3 or something began when Dave Grohl joins. And the sonic overhaul that he brought to the band. And I feel like there's like a thing like where Dave Grohl has sort of been erased from the conversation around drummers. And certainly, and I love the Melvins, and I love Dale Crover. And if the Melvins had a steadier bass player for long, I debated putting them in with Kevin Rootmenis. But there's a really weird thing I see constantly now of like, fuck Dave Grohl and whatever. Dave Grohl, I'm not the biggest Foo Fighters fan in the world. I like a handful of songs, but really and truly, to me, he's still the drummer in Nirvana. And then there's Chris Novoselic. Chris Novoselic is the through line other than Kurt, and I think that Chris Novoselic is a hugely underrated figure. Those bass lines, those weaving, beautiful, grooving, melodic bass lines, they were grooving but churning at the same time, and his sort of bobbing and weaving around what Kurt and Dave are doing. Chris is a great underrated musician. I love his playing, and I loved his playing in 1991 when I first heard them, and I've always loved Dave's drumming. Literally the first thought I ever had about Nirvana, because the video, because when I saw It Smells Like Teen Spirit, it didn't have the credit at the beginning. MTV had screwed up. And so I didn't know what the name of the band was, or the song, or anything else. And my first thought about Nirvana literally was, wow, the drummer's really good. You know, that was my first thought about them. And yeah, and I've watched endless Nirvana shows. I have all sorts of bootlegs, etc., etc. They never cease to move me. Even the bad shows from like the 94, the doomed 94 tour of Europe, there's still some stonker performances in that thing as well. So I love them, and they were an incredible, incredible rhythm section. And there's not really anything else like them. Like, they really locked in together, and they're rock solid every single time. Love them. Nirvana. Next up is Cream, another band you may have heard of. So, Ginger Baker and Jack Bruce, right? So I had Cream's greatest hits back when I only had like 10 cassettes, right? Where there was Rolling Stones, Van Halen, Aerosmith, and I forget what else, right? So, and the Doors. So Cream was hugely important to me, and I absolutely love them. I rediscovered them later in my 40s, and like, I always liked them and stuff, but I really rediscovered them and really, really, really rediscovered them during the pandemic. And I had never really listened, so this is the expanded version of Fresh Cream. I had never really listened to this one, and this is incredible. This thing is so white hot and explosive, and a lot of what you're hearing and a lot of what is amazing about it is those two guys. And not to disrespect or minimize Clapton, but oh my God, like, those two are just otherworldly. And then you factor in Jack Bruce as a writing team with Peter Brown, who wrote for Oz Magazine, or did collages for Oz Magazine. I love Peter Brown's lyric style, but him as a songwriting team with Jack Bruce is incredible and super underrated. And they were so idiosyncratic and creative and just oddball. Also, they had the ability to come up with hit singles. So they somehow were able to have one foot in the realm of pop, and then they were able to go off and do all sorts of odd things. My favorite album of theirs is the studio half of Wheels of Fire. It's amazing. It's basically just perfect. And yeah, I mean, Ginger Baker he speaks for himself. I mean, he is unbelievable, and Jack Bruce just super underrated in some circles, but not in my world. He's absolutely incredible, and just the jazz background, and as they were able to bring that into rock and roll and just mix all these different genres. I mean, one of my favorite things of theirs is it has all the Indian elements in Dance the Night Away. That's one of my favorite things they ever did. Absolutely love Cream. And just, not to deviate away from them for a second, from Jack Bruce and Ginger Baker for a second, but I mean, one of the first songs I ever picked out on the guitar was I picked out the arpeggio section of Badge, and I felt like I had run up the side of Mount Fuji when I did that. I mean, that was like one of like the great moments of my life. So yeah, Cream is like very important to me, and yeah, absolutely incredible. If you haven't done the deep dive on this album, I highly recommend it. Next up is Crazy Horse. Yes, Billy Talbot and Ralph Molina. A band that I have listened to, like, I don't know how many hours I have spent listening to these guys play. Seen them live a few times. They are just as amazing and just as incredible live. I'm going to paraphrase Keith Richards yet again. Kind of what he had to say about Charlie Watts. It's interesting, for a band that rocks that hard and rocks that heavy, they're not really pounding and thrashing that much. There's a lot of restraint and subtlety. Also, the harmony singing that they bring is gorgeous. On top of that, I know that people sort of focus on the stomp and the sludge and the noise and the trudge of Crazy Horse. And rightfully so. They do that better than anybody, right? on the one hand. On the other hand, they can be really deft and fleet-footed and musical when they want to be. So even like the title track of this, or Winter Long, or Pardon My... are they on Pardon My Heart? I don't remember now, but like, I think they are. Just that, what they do on Look Out for My Love, just absolutely gorgeous. So, and a lot of love. Like they can be delicate and gentle, and they have a lot more range than they are given credit for. And and it might be sloppy, and Billy Talbot might be a little sloppy. So what? It's got soul, but it also has musical intelligence, and they know when and where to play, and it is pretty much always right. And that thing on the Archives 3 of them playing it is it at the Catalyst in '84. Is that the name of it? Where they're doing like those the songs that didn't make it on the albums, like the one about driving trucks and like Rock Forever. Like those are awesome. That is incredible. That's some of their best music is on there. And I have a bootleg of it. I had a vinyl bootleg of it for a few years before it finally officially came out. But that alone would put them in the conversation of the best rhythm sections of all time. Absolutely love them. Crazy Horse. Next up, we have Frank Bello and Charlie Benante from Anthrax, a band that I like so much. Not only do I listen to the music, yes, we drink Charlie Benante's coffee in this household. Charlie Benante's coffee is the official coffee of this house. That is right. So I see that face every morning. I didn't talk about Anthrax in the Guitar Teams video, but as a rhythm section of whatever you would want to call the Big Four, are they the best? They very well could be. They're the ones that have blown me away the most. Both Frank Bello. I mean, if Frank Bello was just a bass player in another band, he would be like the best player in that band. And then Charlie Benante is an absolute monster. The other thing I always loved about Anthrax, their openness to music and their small C Catholic tastes. They follow the muse and they follow their ears, and I absolutely love that about them. I love the John Bush era. Sound of White Noise is a great record. Stomp, is it Stomp? I always get, oh my God, Front 242, Stomp, is it Stomp 442? I always flip those around. I really like those records. Obviously, the 80s stuff is great. Particular fan of Persistence of Time, and particular fan of Belly of the Beast. That bass playing on that is ridiculous. So, absolutely amazing. Like, just, again, and you watch them live, and they're still, like, they still, bring it hardcore live. Amazing. Anthrax. So next up, we have Little Richard. Now, his original band, the Upsetters, only played on a few studio recordings, specifically Keep a Knocking, which is one of the greatest frantic rock and roll recordings of all time. But his main records of the 50s, as produced by Bumps Blackwell, one of the greatest producers in the entire history of rock and roll. It's a dead heat between him and Sam Phillips for early rock and roll producers, as far as I'm concerned. But we have Earl Palmer on drums and Frank Fields on bass. And these guys, I mean, they played on a lot of other records. They played with Fats Domino. They played, like, their lists of their credits list is ridiculous. But as a body of work, what they did with Little Richard in the 50s basically is rock and roll rhythm. I mean, these are arguably the greatest rock and roll recordings of all time. Obviously, Little Richard plays a role in that. Obviously, the sonic power and invention of Bumps Blackwell plays a role in that. But you cannot take anything away from these two guys. And again, they could slow it down and they could groove and they could swing. And they have great swing and they have great, again, roll. But when they are rocking, they still basically kind of out-rock, like, hardcore bands. Like, they're all out going for it is the most kind of perfect frenetic rock and roll music ever made. And I still, in a lot of ways, don't really ever think that Little Richard was in the 50s was topped. It's still as good as music gets and as great as rock and roll can ever possibly be. There's a reason why John Lennon said he didn't really think anybody had topped Little Richard or Chuck Berry. And all these decades later, I don't really think he's wrong. I think other people just sort of expanded on it. But this is the thing incarnate, sent straight down from heaven to us to enjoy forevermore. Yes. Next up, we have the Bad Brains, of course. Daryl Jennifer on bass and the great Earl Hudson on drums, HR's brother. This is, of course, Rock for Light. I could have pulled any number of their other recordings. Rock for Light might just be, I know some people prefer the Roar cassette, and that's great, but I'm a little bit more of a Rock for Light person. I mean, the musical language that these guys created, they were originally jazz fusion players, and then their ability to become basically a reggae band, and then a pioneering pre-alt-rock band by the time it gets to Eye Against Eye, though Eye Against Eye dates back to like 82 or something, which is also equally bizarre and improbable. Absolutely incredible. Their command of rhythmic idioms, again, their invention. They kind of basically are the world's first proper hardcore band. They are to hardcore somewhere between Black Sabbath and Judas Priest are to heavy metal. Again, they are the thing incarnate. They are always perfect. Again, any live recordings you want to go look up of them, but especially as I talked about in my concert films video, them at CBGB's, utterly transcendent, white hot at all times, and just all the rhythmic stops and starts, all the different stuff that they do, all the different little sections and subsections of the songs, and the complexity of the arrangements, and that they are playing it that fast. Ridiculous. And then that they can, on a dime, turn around and play reggae. And I'm not the biggest reggae fan, but they play it as well as any other reggae music I've ever heard. Do you know what I mean? So, who the hell else could do that? Who the hell else would think to even try to do that? So, the Bad Brains, an unbelievably formidable, brilliant, genius rhythm section. All right, it was just a matter of time before these guys got on here, and you know it. You know, if you've watched my other videos, you know how I feel about them. You know what they mean to me. Jane's Addiction. Oh, come on. Eric Avery and Stephen Perkins. Oh, my God. Does it get better? What is it, 1991 Forum performance? The full show it was released on the Cabinet of Curiosities box set. Go look up them live in Milan in 1990. That original incarnation of Jane's Addiction, I think, is one of the greatest things that has ever been. It changed my life forever, and in a lot of ways, I've really never gotten over it or past it. That's it for me. That is a perfection that not really much else has ever come anywhere close in my life. Eric Avery as a songwriter, but again as a bass player, the next sort of development of musical language beyond what Peter Hook or Jah Wobble were doing, and then Stephen Perkins is totally unique, somewhere between Gene Krupa and tribal drumming and the Bad Brains. It's not for nothing that Perry Farrell described them as a combination of Duke Ellington and the Bad Brains. It's dance music. It's the ultimate in primal physical dance music. I don't really know what else to say. The range of Jane's Addiction, from the most graceful, bringing you up to the heavens, face of God beauty, all the way into the ultimate pits of intensity and primordial frenzy. They are it. They are the whole of it. They are the thing that I still pursue. They are what I hear in the back of my head. They are the soundtrack of my fantasies. They are the house band of my subconscious mind. They are the house band of my spirit. And yeah, that combination is pretty unbeatable. And it's interesting, them and the Bad Brains in a band we're going to get to in a second. There's sort of a show band quality to them, where there is a little bit like an R&B review thing, where the arrangements really are built upon them being white hot and delivering the goods and delivering the intensity, and to look at how fucking badass we are. And with other bands, that sort of thing would sound ridiculous, but they nail it because they're the avatar. They're the living avatar of it. So things that would look ridiculous from somebody else look absolutely perfect on them. Eric Avery, Stephen Perkins, I love them forever. Always have, always will. Jane's Addiction. And the next show band, here we are. So in my Prince video, I talked about that Purple Rain was the first album I ever bought with my own money. This was the second. Yes, this is the copy that I bought. I guess it would have been late 84, early 85, whatever that works out to. But yeah, Van Halen, specifically with David Lee Roth. Now, so there's David Lee Roth and there's Edward Van Halen. Those are two pretty outsized talents. As a result, poor Alex Van Halen, I think, is about as underrated as it gets. And then even more underrated is poor Michael Anthony, who gets slated left and right, kind of by everybody. But, there's the contention that Michael Anthony didn't play bass on a bunch, on these great Van Halen albums. When I say the great Van Halen albums, this is the last of them. David Lee Roth, 1978 to 1984. That's what I'm talking about. And here's the thing with that. First of all, Eddie would claim credit for things. You know, he wasn't shy about claiming credit. And Eddie would talk about Michael Anthony's bass playing, like on Fair Warning and stuff. So, first of all, I think Eddie could have grabbed credit at any time for that. Number one. Number two, Michael Anthony's, as everyone talks about, his backing vocals. He is carrying the band sometimes vocally when Roth is jumping around or forgetting lyrics or whatever. But the other thing I would point to is there's apparently the original version of Hot for Teacher where Eddie is mimicking the guitar on the bass. He's doubling it. And I think that if Eddie really was playing the bass on a lot of that stuff, I think the bass would be a lot busier. What Michael Anthony is doing is clean and musical and perfect. And the other thing I would add is there's been all those recent leaks. It's been a good time to be a Van Halen fan lately. There's all those leaks of all that incredible live footage. And listen, and that's the thing. That's the fingerprints. You can't sand away the fingerprints. Listen to what's on the records and listen to the live stuff. That's the same guy. That's the same feel. That's the guy locking in with Al. And the way Eddie locks in with Al is a little different. When it's just the two of them, when Eddie comes back out after the drum solo, it is different. And no, Michael Anthony, yes, he is not a virtuoso in a band of virtuosos, but he is the perfect guy for the band, and he's kind of the only guy. I wouldn't have wanted to hear Billy Sheehan in that context. Absolutely not. No disrespect, but I think you get the point I'm making. So that's him. Alex Van Halen is unbelievably underrated as a drummer. And I feel like I finally have seen some videos where he's finally kind of getting his due and being talked about with the reverence that he deserves. But Alex Van Halen is a phenomenal drummer, and part of the magic of Van Halen is that they really rock. And I always say, the problem with a lot of rock music, it doesn't actually rock. They rock, and especially the sound of them, like Women and Children First, certainly the first album, moments on this, the groove on Drop Dead Legs, a perfect example. Stuff on Fair Warning, amazing. Like, they hit it, and they hit it hard, and they hit it perfect every time, and it grooves and rocks and swings perfect. And that is the result of guys playing endless hours together. Those are the guys who played all those bars and backyard parties in Pasadena, right? Amazing. Like, my kind of obsession with them only increases over time, and they were already like one of my favorite bands. And the older I get, the more I study, the more I hear. And the perfection of them is, you know, is top to bottom. And so that means, yes, all 4 of them. So justice for Alex Van Halen, justice for Michael Anthony. Love them. Always have, always will. Okay, now, ultimate rhythm section. I'm cheating. I'm doing a 2-in-1. This is the Stooges. You know the Stooges. Dave Alexander, Scott Ashton. I don't really know what else to say. This is maybe the ultimate rhythm section rock album ever made. Again, you have Ron Ashton, you have Iggy Pop, you have these 2 massive outsized talents, but then you've got Dave Alexander, who, again, take Dave Alexander out of the band. What do you got then? You know, he is such a linchpin holding things together. And then you have Scott Ashton. I've talked about Scott in my Stooges videos. He's maybe the ultimate rock and roll drumming minimalist and one of the absolute best. I think Scott Ashton's like one of, like, on any given day, one of like the 3 greatest drummers that ever played rock and roll. He understood it perfectly. He is it perfectly. Every groove, every rhythmic pattern, every rhythmic idiom is the right one. He never has once overplayed. The taste level is perfect. The way he hits is perfect. I talked before about the rightness of his playing, that even when he's just doing a 4/4 on the bass, it's like, that's the way the 4/4 on the bass drum should sound. Like, I saw him play 2 times. I was floored, but I already knew he was one of the best in the world, or one of the best that had ever lived, and that he just basically lived up to my sky-high fucking expectations of what he was going to do. Unbelievable. And then there's the second incarnation with Ron Ashton on bass. Ron, totally different mentality as a bass player than Dave Alexander. And Dave Alexander, again, is a radical bass player for this time. This is way out there churning stuff. This prefigures what Chuck Dukowski is going to do, and what Flipper's going to do, and what Jaw Wobble even is going to do. Like, this is again way out in front. Amazing. But Ron Ashton, totally different sensibility, super disciplined, like more melodic, deft, amazing, and he has his own identity. But Scott, as a testament to his talent, melds with both of them perfectly. Absolutely phenomenal. I mean, this is probably the single greatest rock and roll album ever made. You know how I feel about the Stooges. Do I need to say more? Right? Another record I've shown before, the Minutemen, George Hurley and Mike Watt. I feel like Mike Watt tends to grab a lot of the notices because of his outsized, totally justified, of course, stature in the punk rock world. But George Hurley, oh my God, incredible drummer. And you couldn't have Mike Watt if you didn't have George Hurley. They were also great in Firehose, and I've been going through the Firehose records lately, so love that as well. But the Minutemen, the rhythmic range, the again, groove, swing, the intensity, they get the rock, they get the roll, they get the swing. And George Hurley is basically like a jazz drummer. He's like the closest there is to like a big band drummer in rock and roll, or certainly in hardcore. Amazing, intricate, beautiful, ever-flowing drums. And then you have Mike Watt, who can basically just do anything. He can eat the side of your head, and he can play beautiful, flowing, graceful, nimble bass lines, and basically play funk. He can do it all. And obviously as a songwriter, he's incredible. And as a conceptualist, incredible. The Minutemen, that is a perfect body of work. And I will say here, I almost did it last year. I will be doing a Minutemen video. Hopefully this year. I'm kind of maybe thinking later summer. That's what I would like to do. So love the Minutemen, but yeah, Mike Watt, George Hurley, pretty unbeatable. Kind of like the Guitar Teams video, and this is coming in at what, number 3? Yeah. I don't know if you've heard of these guys. They're this band out of England called the Beatles. This, by the way, is my picture disc bootleg of the Decca auditions, which I got when I was like 15 years old. It was like one of the first bootlegs I ever got, and it was the only way to hear these at the time. So So yeah, so like picture discs were always like not that great in terms of fidelity, so I would play this sparingly, but I loved it. So yeah, obviously Paul McCartney, Ringo Starr. I've talked before about Ringo. I think Ringo is perpetually the most underrated drummer in the history of rock and roll. Ringo is phenomenal. Go and look at the Beatles in Sweden in '63. That's some of the greatest rock and roll in terms of a rhythm section that you're ever going to hear. That first U.S. concert in Washington, D.C., oh, that is perfect. Watch Ringo's playing during that. Oh, and then obviously the more famous stuff like Tomorrow Never Knows or A Day in the Life or Strawberry Fields. Amazing. Again, I think he benefited from Jeff Emmerich's pioneering drum miking techniques. But it wouldn't mean a thing without Ringo, because even before those drum miking techniques, listen to his like for the ages playing on Ticket to Ride, absolutely phenomenal. So Ringo is one of, and always played for the song, always played for the feel. Again, taste, musical intelligence, swing, but could also rock like hell. Listen to his playing on the White Album. We love Ringo here. Ringo, like Ringo forever, okay? Love him. Like one of the very, very best. And then you obviously have Paul McCartney. Do I need to talk about Paul McCartney? Do I need to talk about that he's one of the greatest bass players that ever lived? Like, I mean, there's obviously the songwriting, the voice, that incredible voice that can basically do anything. The fact that he's 50% of probably the single greatest songwriting team of the 20th century. There's all that. There's all that. Paul's ability to conceptualize, Paul's like on and on and on. Okay, like we all know about Paul. Like, but Paul as a bass player, and Paul specifically as a bass player with Ringo, is one of the truly great marvels. And again, from the playing on Abbey Road, the playing on the White Album, like the stuff in the middle, the grooves on Rubber Soul, the Taxman, like unbelievable. It's moment after moment after moment after moment. And when they're doing stuff like Long Tall Sally or Twist and Shout or any of the BBC session stuff, they can thrash and rip it up like nobody's fucking business. The highest compliment I can give them is a pure rock and roll band. They never sounded ridiculous doing Chuck Berry or Little Richard, and those are two very different things. Those are two very different musical temperaments, and Ringo and Paul could play to both. Amazing. Basically as good as it gets. So I rated John and George as a guitar team. I rate Paul and Ringo as a rhythm section. Unbelievable. There's a reason they're probably my favorite band. All the component parts add up to perfection. Right? Next up, a band that I feel very passionately about, and this is my number 2. So the Beatles I have as my number 3. This is my number 2. I feel very strongly about this. Geezer Butler, Bill Ward, Black Sabbath. I will never forget the Rolling Stone album guide, yet again, referring to them as, I think, club-footed, clumsy, dumb, anything fucking but. They are so fierce and playing ahead of the beat and right on the knife's edge on the Paranoid album, right? It's perfect. And then they only got more expansive from there. Forget about heavy metal. These guys were playing music. So yes, they invented heavy metal, and yes, they invented the doom metal and on and on. Yeah, fantastic. But again, these guys as brilliant. You have again 2 major outsized talents with Ozzy Osbourne and Tony Iommi. But again, you strip those away, and these guys would be the best part of any other band. So they couldn't do what Tony and Ozzy, but especially like Tony, couldn't do what he did without these 2 guys. And also, Geezer Butler is a lyric writer, a very underrated, very interesting lyric writer. But then you have Bill Ward, this totally idiosyncratic, all over the kit, ultra creative player, bringing together elements of jazz and soul, but also rocking like hell, and early tribal drumming and all sorts of things. There's so much in Bill's playing, and it's absolutely right all the time. And so in the same way that like they're ahead of the beat and on the knife's edge on the second album, by volume 4 they're like playing behind the beat. And and that is just as commanding and just as amazing. And as it gets into the later 70s stuff, like I know some people don't like those later records, in the later Ozzy records as much. And yeah, maybe from a songwriting perspective, you don't sort of have instant classics like Children of the Grave or Sabbath Bloody Sabbath, but those last two records are still absolutely amazing, and like the zenith that they hit on Sabbath Bloody Sabbath, on Sabotage, unbelievable. These guys were total monsters of players, and I love their playing, and in some circles they might be underrated. They're not underrated to me. This is serious fucking business and super beautifully musical in every way. I love them. Black Sabbath. Oh, one other thing about Black Sabbath, just to be clear, as much as they forged their style and then expanded upon it, one other thing, and that is when Ronnie James Dio joins the band and Bill Ward's around for that, like Bill Ward totally modified his style for Ronnie James Dio and for what he wanted to be able to do, and he plays more straight ahead beats, and he's way more just like straight ahead 4/4, and is awesome at that too, because again, taste, musical intelligence, doing it right. So amazing. And finally, number one, The Who, John Entwistle, Keith Moon. When I think of rhythm sections, so in the same way that when I thought of guitar teams, I thought of the Velvet Underground. I mean, that's what I thought of. When I think of rhythm sections, I think of The Who. I don't know that it gets better than that. I don't know that it could ever be better than that. You have two complete musical geniuses going full force, and top flight Who, especially on Live at Leeds, is some of the most sublime music of the heavens that you're ever going to hear. John Entwistle, to me, there's sort of the perfect trifecta of 60s bass players. There's Paul McCartney, James Jamerson, and John Entwistle. His playing is absolutely incredible. And as Townsend pointed out, he could be super restrained, like on Tommy. He's super restrained, and because he's playing to the music, because there's so much other stuff happening. But then when he lets loose, as he does on Who's Next or on The Real Me, but especially something like Live at Leeds or any of those live recordings, he's dizzying. And then you have Keith Moon. Over the last few decades, the unthinkable has happened. I see Keith Moon get people talk down about Keith Moon. And up through when I was about 15 or 16, Keith Moon was talked about as like the ultimate drumming genius. People talked about Keith Moon the way they talk about Jimi Hendrix, right? And at some point, and I actually lay some of the blame of this at Townsend's feet. Townsend started this shit of, oh, Keith Moon didn't play to the, like, no. The section of Riders on the Storm where John Densmore talks about seeing the Who plays on the side of the stage at the Isle of Wight in 1970, and he talks about, and John Densmore had the musical training, the schooling to talk about it in musical terms and talk about it like how there was this amazing little fortissimo on the tom tom, and then he goes over and he broke down what Keith Moon was doing, but Keith Moon wasn't schooled in such a way. He just was doing it. He just was it. And I think listening to Keith Moon is one of the most extraordinary things that you get the fucking gift of in your life. Because my God, what a player, what an unbelievable player, and what an unbelievable sort of end product of the two of them. And again, kind of like what I was talking about with other things, like when you're listening to Live at Leeds, or when you're listening to like Melancholia or some of this stuff, a lot of or Hall of the Mountain King or whatever, a lot of the stuff that you're hearing is them, and as great as Townsend is, and as much as Townsend is the musical director and starts up the riffs that they extemporize off of, those guys take it out into the stratosphere. They could do it every single time. They were, to me, they are the best rhythm section. And also, look at the range. They started off during the British invasion and basically pioneer into whatever you want to call arena rock, right? The experience of listening to the Who's 60s singles in order, so all those, I'm a Boy and Happy Jack and Pictures of Lily, I Can See for Miles, when Anywhere, Anyway, Anyhow is like a masterpiece. Listening to all of those in a row is one of like the best musical experiences, one of the best listening experiences that you could have. It's just so perfect. And again, the word joy comes up. It's joyful. It's ecstatic. It is like, as much as there's a lot of anger and intensity, there's a lot of like ecstasy in there as your brain overfloods with absolute fucking enjoyment and throttling around listening to this phenomenal celestial fucking music. So yeah, and they get me there every single time. They never fail to. And again, Townsend talked with Entwistle about the phenomenon of you're hearing more than just the notes he's playing. There's this other thing that's taking place, and the Who are incredible pioneers of that. So to me, they've always been the number one rhythm section. Like always. So yeah, so the Who. So there you have it. That's my list. I hope that you have enjoyed this. And now we're going to do some fun viewer questions. So I hope that you are ready for this. So here we go. Vegetable Man 67 says, hey, Rich, we all know how much you enjoy Edwin Canistracci and Bill's Box of Sound. Do you have other, and Giggins, do you have other favorite YouTubers currently, or any new favorites? And that's a great question, Vegetable Man 67, thank you. I do, in fact. Kubrick Theory are really fun, great videos, short videos, but really great about Stanley Kubrick movies. But she also did one recently about Richard III that was really great. The other, musically, the Wild Flow podcast is really good. That guy knows a lot more than I do. That guy is very, very impressive. So I haven't watched much of them, but I've seen enough to be pretty knocked out. And then the big one I've really been enjoying lately, because they make videos longer than mine, is Director's Dossier. So they've done breakdowns of David Lynch, Martin Scorsese, the Great Film Network. They just did a 5-hour breakdown of The Shining, and it's interesting. They're young guys, but I feel like they have this attitude similar to mine, that we'd rather give you more information than less. And also, the other thing I think is cool about them, and with me I make such long videos, is we're not we're not doing TV shows. We're not bound by anything. We don't have a contract with Netflix. We can just do whatever we want. Embrace the freedom and come up with your own form and your own format. And those guys are doing it, and they're doing it in such a great way. They're so fun to watch, and they do their research. I love them. So Director's Dossier, highly recommended. All right, up next, Gomper67 asks, hey, Rich, do you have any new bands that you like? And yes, I do. The Orchids. Go and listen to the Orchids. I will link to them. Check out the Orchids. All right, next we have, we have Indie Kid number 5428. And so Indie Kid number 5428 says, hey, Rich, I've watched your videos, and I want to have a channel just like you, and I basically just want to do what you're doing. Do you think that's possible? And I'm sorry, Indie Kid number 5428. The answer is, unfortunately, I hate to say this, but the answer is no, because you don't have what's in here, but you also are missing what's in here. Yes. Next, we have Hoopify. Who would win in a 1v1? You or Jason Pancake? That probably, I'm going to give myself the edge. I think Jason Pancake is one of the only people I could outrun. I'm going to take a guess. I'm pretty out of shape, but god damn it, I'm getting there. Yes. The Ballad of the Green Beret 66 says, yeah, you. I've watched a bunch of your videos, and I want to observe that you move your hands and move around in your chair a lot. Yes, that is a very intelligent observation, Ballad of the Green Beret 66. Thank you for taking the time to type that out and put that out there. That's it's very, 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 very smart. And the other thing I will say is, you know who used to complain about that? You know who used to complain about me? The nuns in my high school. Yeah, so Ballad of the Green Beret 66, if I can believe that is your real name. You know what I think when you moan about that I move my arms and move back and forth? You know what I think you sound like? I think you sound like one of the nuns in my high school. That's what I think. Yes, Carnival of Light 67. What was the last concert that you attended? So I don't really go to concerts that much anymore, but the last concert I attended was Casey and the Sunshine Band. It was a fun night. A fun time was had by all. And then Ichiku Park 67 says, Rich, are you excited for the Autumn Stone reissue? You bet I am. You bet I am. You bet I pre-ordered that. And then we have Joey19 said, hey, Rich, are there any movies you've recently bought that you'd like to share? And yes, there is. I bought Godard's version of King Lear, which is absolutely incredible. And there was a YouTube version of it, but this actually being able to really hear it, yes, it matters. The sound mix really matters. It's like a Public Enemy album, basically. It's incredible, and to see it in better quality. This is really, really wonderful, and one of Godard's best 80s movies, along with the very underrated Keep Your Right Up, which I'm a big fan of. But then, thanks to the great Edwin Canistracci, I got into the movie Backtrack, Dennis Hopper's Backtrack, and I got so into it, I bought the Blu-ray because it has the director's cut. It's an extra half hour. And let me tell you, if you like the version that's out there on Amazon Prime, or maybe you caught this late night on cable one time, or something like that, but you haven't seen the director's cut, do yourself a favor, because it adds a whole other layer, whole other levels added. And the director's cut is, I think, infinitely superior. So I've gotten really into the movie Backtrack. So thanks to Edwin's Dennis Hopper kick from a few months ago, because I've watched this 4 times in the past 2 weeks. So I love Backtrack. So yeah, and we have one more question. Albert 6932, I guess there were 6,931 Alberts before this one. Hey, Rich, I know how much you like buying box sets. Have you got any recently? And yes, I have. I still buy CDs. So I got the David Lee Roth reissues. This is everything from the Crazy from the Heat EP up through 1994's Your Filthy Little Mouth. I've been making my way through these and very much enjoying that. The Buy or Die set this is put out on Cherry Red. This is amazing. This is all the different compilations that Ralph Records put out. This is between 1972 and 1982. There's a fair amount of Resident stuff I already had on here, but there is a ton of really, really, really amazing stuff from, let's see, there's stuff from Snakefinger. I already had the Art Bears box set, but there's some recordings by the great Gary Panter, the great painter, Gary Panter, but there's some great stuff from Tuxedo Moon, from Fred Frith, Ronaldo and the Loaf, and I haven't really gotten into the yellow stuff yet. I need to do that. But I've been so kind of into the Snakefinger and Ronaldo and the Loaf stuff that I'll move on to checking out the rest. But I've been pretty fixated on that. And then also recently, I got the Pete Townsend albums. Now these don't have any extras on them. But I wanted to get them anyway because there's a bunch of Townsend later. He hasn't made an album since 1993. But there's some records I never owned, or there were a couple that I had listened to like once or twice and then gave away. So this has everything in one place. I thought this would be a good time to just sort of snatch this up. So like White City, Iron Man, and Psychoderelict in particular, I just wasn't that familiar with. So I thought that this would be a lot of fun. But why not have remastered copies of the first album and Rough Mix, because I just have the vinyl record I have of Rough Mix is pretty thin, but then Empty Glass, and I love Empty Glass, but I also love all the best cowboys of Chinese Eyes, which I've thought many times before about doing a video on, and maybe someday I shall. But anyway, that about wraps things up here. I hope that you've enjoyed this. I am very much planning on doing more ambitious Rich Talks record style reviews in a few weeks, but this is just a really busy time, and I wanted to get this out there because I've been wanting to make this video anyway for a really long time. So I thought this would be kind of the perfect week to do it. But at any rate, I'll be back in a few weeks. I have a long list of stuff to get through to do for this channel and do it properly. So, but I hope that you've enjoyed this, and I will see you all soon enough in the next video. And until then, yeah. Bye!
Just finished watching Rich Talks Records. Now the anticipation for the next episode begins.